Hello and welcome to Timothy's Arts and the Underpainting series. If you're new to underpainting, it's a technique that flourished during the Renaissance. It involves creating a foundational painting, most often in warm tones like burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and white, where the artist can focus on values, contrast, and details of the subject matter separately from the hue, color saturation, and color modeling, which are added in a series of pure color washes, glazes, and painting in thin layers, which are supported by the underpainting. So if you have your own pet subject and would like to work alongside in this first series, I'm glad to have you on board. We'll be starting with the drawing. I've traced my drawing on a light paper. In my case, animation paper, but any paper suitable for tracing is just fine. Then as you can see, I'm using a soft charcoal pencil to darken the back so it can easily transfer to the canvas. Now with a number 2 pencil, or any hard pencil, I'll draw over my lines to transfer the drawing to the canvas. Also, I've used a little bit of masking tape to hold the paper in place. And I won't keep that masking tape on it any longer than I have to, so no adhesive transfers to the canvas. Now once that paper is down, or rather once the drawing is down, and I've done the bottom basket a bit earlier so you didn't have to wait through that. Now once that drawing is down, I'm going to go over it again with a hard pencil just to clarify the drawing. Because as we put the burnt sienna wash over it, that drawing would most likely wash away if we didn't redefine it with a pencil. Now with the drawing down, I'm going to put a bit of burnt sienna wash on the palette, and then I'm going to take the water. I'm now going to coat the canvas with water before laying down the burnt sienna. This will allow the paint to take to the canvas more easily, and I won't have any areas where it sort of dries on the edges, if you've come across that yourself. And the goal here is to put an even wash across the entire canvas. And to do that, I'll end up painting, from spreading it out, getting to those edges, and then doing a cross-hatching across the entire painting to even out the coat. And you can keep it like this if you like that whole brushed out look. If you prefer a smoother look, you can try long strokes across the entire canvas, each one in one full motion. And I'll go with either one, but when I have 2 choices, I'll tend to just continue the painting with the second choice. Now in doing this, it allows us to not be painting directly onto a white canvas. And now I'm adding the paint. You can see that I'm bringing the color up. I'm pulling the lights up as I push the darks down. And my palette for the underpainting is very simple. It's made up of burnt sienna, burnt umber, yellow ochre, and titanium white. Now if the paint store you're in doesn't happen to have yellow ochre, yellow oxide is a good alternative, and red oxide is a little bit bright but can also be an alternative for burnt sienna. Although these are the classic colors, so they should be in any art store. I'm also going to check my reference regularly. So again, with this palette, I can create those initial values, the color tones, the mass of the figure, and it is basically the foundation painting that we'll be building out from here. You may also find yourself drawing with your paint throughout the underpainting part. So that your original drawing is not lost inside paint, so to speak. And even doing this, there's always that temptation to push it further, introduce more colors, and have to fight that temptation to race to the finish line. It'll also teach us, well, it taught me a lot in working on underpaintings over the years. How much tone and color you can pull out of the simplest of palettes. In working with pure color and muted down colors. For example, adding whites, adding blacks to them. And how rich the simple colors can be. The burnt umber, burnt sienna, and yellow ochre. Now my reference image for this was inside. But this painting or illustration has been moved into the open air. So I'm having to make choices of how do I want the light to fall on the character. Do I want an internal light? Now I'm not going to, in this case, necessarily try to copy outdoor lighting. Because I do want this to be a sort of an intimate illustration of just the cat and his thoughts. So working the lighting on the character as if it were an internal setting. Sorry about the outside noise. Again, working on the lighting as if it were internal, even though it's in an outdoor setting. Can help to unify the image into a personal space. And as I spoke before about you might feel like you are drawing, this basket is the perfect example of that. Where my first pass is going through is just laying down the shadow areas very roughly. And out of that, I'll begin to pull some color in, or lay some color over. Roughly place some highlights in, and I'm not refining it at all. Now letting this be a little bit more rough and painterly within this painting will allow the eye to just move up right into the character. Currently they're being painted in the same palette. So as we move deeper into the additional layers, we'll separate them. But it is okay if it begins looking a little bit monochromatic. bringing in the light or the highlights in this case. Helps to identify, or helps to establish, better said, the construction of the basket. Now the slate in this image, or in this illustration, I want to be like 100 years old. So I've laid down some burnt umber, and then with a charcoal pencil I've drawn out my slate. It's a slate roof of a workshop. So with a rough bristle brush, I'm just knocking out highlights and weathering and an old uncleaned texture. Now the background, as this looks out over a river and then up into the sky, so I'm just going to fill in some burnt umber and white for the river and then push up into the sky. For an initial pass. Now I'm using simply burnt umber and white, and then as I build into the clouds, creating that shape, which is basically a big triangle of sorts, a cloud-based triangle, directing the viewer's attention down into the character. Now, because we are working rather wet with acrylic, if there's ever a case of drips being a possible something to be avoided when doing larger areas like clouds or a sky, consider turning the painting over, or in any direction, so you're not in danger of having drips coming into your main area of the painting or your characters. Now, as we have the underpainting laid out and the sky is dry, I'm now going to wet the canvas, and within the top of the painting I'm going to put a cobalt blue wash. Only in the sky, clouds, the background trees, and the water. So this paint I'm laying on now as a wash is simply one transparent layer. On the bottom, I'm introducing burnt sienna as a wash. Again as a transparent layer. And this is to unify everything we've done in our underpainting. And as we painted up, added more color, added more tone. And by adding this burnt sienna wash, the more earth part of the painting is grounded and unified, as the upper part of the painting begins to lighten up. This is also the point where I'm going to add, well, when this is dry, I'm going to wet it again, and I'm going to add an acrylic matte varnish. I'm going to add it onto a wet canvas, cross-hatch my way through, or brush my way through, and then allow that to dry. So this will be basically a transparent layer in between layers of color, as we're back to adding now. And you also might see that I switched to a color palette with little cups in it. This is because I'm only working now in pure colors. Now I love mixing colors and everything that goes along with that. But when I'm working in just pure color washes, it's sort of like a glaze, but it's more of just a wash because there's no medium involved, just the color, the paint in the water. But working with these pure color washes allow me to build up the color over the underpainting where I've established my values. And in doing so, I can bring up the vibrancy and presence of my foreground elements. Now in these shadows, I'm throwing a little bit of purple in there. So the next time I throw a color glaze over it, it's kind of hidden. But it does wonders for creating these nice deep darks. I'm adding that same purple to the dark areas between the slate on the roof. Again, it's a dark that's more felt than seen. And then I'll add a bit of roughness to the basket, as I do want it to look a bit weathered. And I'll now add a bit of a blue-gray, a light blue-gray to begin to work out the water, and a darker green-gray to work my way through those background trees. Now I want them almost unnoticed. So I'm mixing my greens with yellow, white, and black to push them into a muted space and eventually just blend right into the sky. And speaking of the sky, we are back to the clouds. Now I have an issue with clouds myself. I should just do one pass on the clouds and walk away, but I tend to rework my clouds over and over and over. In this case, I want them there, but not a lot of detail, but also believable enough so it's simply felt instead of seen. Now I'm using a smaller bristle brush to refine and create a bit, sharper edges in that slate on the bottom. Sharpening up items on the basket. And then putting a wash in of in this case a stronger orange that is a transparent color. I always push for transparent colors when doing my sort of washes that could be glazes. And again, I'm tightening up edges on the slate. So even when there's not a lot of contrast on an item like this slate, I can add a seeming contrast from its definition. Now I'm reworking the lights on top of those washes of the basket. I'm now adding a blue wash on top of the slate so that it reflects off the sky. And then adding detail to the water just to break up the whole water shape. As again, I'm sort of just pushing this water into the background. And then another glaze. And another layer into the sky. And here's that blue wash coming over the water, the trees, the clouds, and the sky. Unifying the entire background. Now I still found that detail on the edge of the clouds a bit bit much. So I'm lightening it up. An area just outside the edge of the clouds. Or just inside, better said. And finally, we are back to our, well, in the book his name is Cooper. He's a character in a cozy mystery. I'm currently doing a series of illustrations for it. And his basket, which apparently is his throne, is epoxied to a slate roof on a workshop. It was once a boat. And as this boat rotted out over the years, the boat builder would replace it with stone until there was nothing left of the wood but a stone boat used as a workshop to build dinghies. Now in this section of the painting, I'm simply reworking, adding more color, adding more detail, and defining the whole feel of the cat. And how his figure sits in the basket and within the entire painting. Now I'll go over the eyes quite a bit until I'm truly happy with it. Now, whiskers are something I discovered bring a lot of stress about. Painting whiskers while you are filming yourself is a little bit stressful, because you kind of have to go in there and get it right the first time. But you actually don't. You can wipe off the paint immediately if you've made a bad pass at the whiskers. So I'm adding more detail, refining the eyes, refining the areas of where the hair highlights out. And I'm using a liner brush, which holds a bit more paint, and you can make longer passes with it, which works very well for painting whiskers. Now I did clean these whiskers up even more after the video. It is my Achilles heel to keep futzing with paintings. Now I have also found recently been using a filbert grainier. And using this filbert grainier, I've been able to add more detail and work the edges of my character into the sky in a very nice, soft manner. And in this case, it's a 3/8 filbert grainier. And when it is wet, it separates into multiple small sections that allows fur to be added, and with the warning, and here it's very easy to overuse this brush. So I did my best not to, and I hope I succeeded. And here is our painting. Now coming back, the light source is coming from the right. So these highlights that I added need to be finessed a little bit. I want the light rims on the ears there, like I've added. But then I'm also going to put a yellow ochre wash over the highlights of the eyes, just to push them down slightly so that the light coming from the back, making his fur white on the right side, will be better defined as the source of light. And here we have the finished painting. Now in the next shot you'll see I did add a few more highlights to the basket. And I cleaned up the whiskers. If you've made it this far, congratulations! You've just gone through the process of developing your first underpainting, and layer upon layer upon layer, building up in colors and tone to a finished painting that can have the substance and depth that is hard to achieve in flat acrylic painting on its own. So great work everyone, and the next painting we'll do is going to be a straight-on portrait as well, a bit more of a close-up, and I look forward to you following along.